This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so this is where we are. This is what we were talking yesterday, and we were discussing about a very important concept called branching and merging strategies. Wherein I was just talking about how do you manage all the branches, and as a DevOps engineer, what we do. And this is where we are. This is what we were discussing yesterday. Is that we started off with something called as a main or a master branch. We said that this is the default branch that comes up inside a repository when as and when you create one, and this branch is just a backup branch. The developers or someone wouldn't touch it. So we said that there is no direct commit on top of this branch. So in order to make sure this happens, we set up something called as a branch policy, wherein we were just implementing one single branch policy. We just said that you at least need one reviewer to approve the change before the change goes ahead and gets committed into, or the change goes ahead and gets merged into the master branch out there. Then we said that okay, fine. Then how do the developers work? Then we said developers work using something known as a develop branch. But again, develop branch also there are no direct commits allowed on top of it. So that's where we were talking about something known as a feature branch, wherein we pull a feature branch from the develop branch. The operation is called a pull operation. We make our changes, or we as in the developers make the changes in the feature branch and then merge it back into the develop branch. And this is where our build and release activity will start. And as I said, you build the code and you release the code into environments which are something like dev and QA. These are the two environments that I'm actually talking about. This is the environment which is dev and QA. That's where you release your code, because to production the code should not or will not go directly from the develop branch. We need to take a branch called a release branch, and we need to use this branch to take the code to the production. So this is where we are. This is the workflow that, or this is the theoretical understanding of the workflow that we do have out here. So any questions till here, guys? Anything, anyone, anything till here? So I was just summarizing what we were talking about talking yesterday. Just trying to summarize everything before we move ahead. So any questions till here, guys? Anything, anyone till here?
Hi, Kiran.
Please.
Regarding this one, yeah, actually, you did changes for a repo, right? What are the changes? File, README file, did in
Hmm.
only in repo, not
Correct.
locally. Once you did in locally, and those changes commit into the repo, right?
So once I do it in local, so for example, if I have a change and I'm in doing making the change in the local machine, I firstly commit the change to my local machine and then push the change back into the repository. That's when the change will get reflected.
Yeah, okay. That part,
Yeah, I'll demo that as well. Like I in which case have to demo something today, so I'll demo that as well today.
yeah, yeah. Thanks.
Anything else, guys? Okay. So I'm coming back to our repository, which is the 7 a.m. class project, and this is this is what I have. We have something known as a feature 100 branch that is ready, and so let me delete this out. So we don't need this branch called feature 100. So I'll just delete this out, and I'll also delete the test branch. So I had the develop branch. Sorry, I had the main branch from which I am now. I did pull yesterday something known as the develop branch, and both the branches have policies on top of them. Let's look at the policies that are there in the develop branch, and it says require minimum number of reviewers, and there are like about just one reviewer out here. So I said please allow just one reviewer out here to make sure that the changes are approved and etc. And there are a couple of things like check for link work items, comment resolutions. What are these? Let's understand these a little bit, and let's see how we can the best utilize the branching policy so that we can protect our branches from code which is not, or code which is not on a very good quality. So let's understand this. Now I am a developer. So this is a question for you all. I am a developer right now. I I need to change some line here. Like let's say I need to add one more line inside this particular readme.md file, and I need to make sure my changes are on the develop branch. So question for you all guys is that, can I now make the change directly on the develop branch? Yes, no, maybe. No, reason being you have branching policies there. So what should I do here in order to make this change?
You can raise a pull request.
Okay, but before raising a pull request, don't you think I need to have a branch existing?
Yes, yes.
So the first thing that I need to do here is that I need to first create a branch to make the change. And this branch is something that I'm calling as a feature branch. But before even raising the feature branch, my question to everyone is that, if a developer is making the change in the code, don't you think someone would have told them to make the change? Because this is now a software development. Let's understand that this is the code that I have. The developer is trying to make a change here, and the developer is trying to add a new line here. Now, don't you think someone would have told them to make this change? Yes, no, maybe. Agree with me? Guys, need some inputs here from your end. Are you getting my question?
Yes.
Yes, so someone would have told them to make a change, right? So, how do I track those work items? Meaning, I am now a technical lead of my team. I am now telling the developer that, you know what, there is this requirement. Please go ahead, please go ahead and add one more line inside this code at, let's say, line number 28, or let's say line number 29. I need another line here called, this is line 3. This is the work that I am giving to the developer. So I am now calling this as a work item. But how do I give him this work? Me as, let's say, a project manager, how do I now give him the work? Now we also remember, we also have someone called as a scrum master. That's where we began. There is someone known as a scrum master who's assigning all these tasks to the developers. So the question here is, if the scrum master is now assigning the work to the developers, where should he assign the work and how should he track the work? Anyone out of your experience or out of any guesses?
Boats.
Boards, okay. Anything else, guys?
Zira tool.
Jira tool, okay. Anything else? So again, what are these boards? What is Jira tools and etc.? Let's understand about this. So I'll make a statement out here telling that I am a Scrum Master. I want to assign the developer a work. I now use an email telling that, okay, fine, please go ahead and, let's say, do this work and etc. But is this an effective way? Not really, because I don't have any transparency as a Scrum Master. I'd like to track the progress of the work, track the work progress. I'd like to understand what the developer is doing, where the developer is, how the developer is actually working, and etc. This is what I'd like to, really look into as, let's say, a Scrum Master. And even as a project manager, I'm very curious to look how the work is actually going and what is the developer really working on, what is the progress and etc. So for this, email would not solve me the purpose. Emails are good enough, but they're not great. So that's where we need some kind of a ticketing system. What do I mean by a ticketing system is that a place where I can assign work and track work effectively. So assigning and tracking the work effectively. For example, we have an inbuilt feature in Azure DevOps, and this is called as boards. So if I click on boards, you have multiple things like work items, boards, product backlogs, and all that stuff. So let me go into the boards and let me see what it looks like really. So this is what it looks like. Firstly, it will just tell you what is the name of the team. In my case, this is 7 a.m. class project. You can add multiple teams, of course, out here. But right now, I am a Scrum Master. I'm coming here, and there are three sections out here. One is called to do, the other is called doing, the third is called done. Meaning, this is how I'm tracking the work. If it's in to do, then I haven't, or the developer hasn't started working on it. If it's doing, the developer is working on it. If it's done, the developer is done working on this one. So I, as a Scrum Master, I'm going ahead and assigning some work item here, and I'll say change the README file, add a line 3 here. So I entered something out here, and if I click on this, I can go ahead and give multiple descriptions here, saying that add line 3 at line number 29. And I will now go ahead and assign this to someone. Like let's say I am one of the users here. So I'm assigning it to one of the user and I'm saying save. Me as a Scrum Master is doing this. Now this user now has a work to do. Okay. This user now has a work to do wherein he's been assigned a work item to go ahead and make a change in the file system of the repository. So this is my repository. So I as a developer should use that particular work item to go ahead and make this change in my repository. So what I'll do is that since I'm using the Azure boards right now, I will also implement one more policy called check for linked work items, meaning make sure that the developer is only working or only making changes to the code if he or she has a valid work item linked to it. So let's look at this. If I implement or if I enforce this policy, so one of the policies is that I require a minimum number of reviewers, that is like one. The other policy is that I'm checking for some work items out here, which is two. So I have two policies enforced here. So I, as a developer, I'm coming here, I'm creating a new branch called feature 200. Let's say this is 200 out here, and I say create, and this is my feature branch right now. And I go inside the README file. I'll say this is line 3. So I added this at line number 28, and I say commit. And I'm just telling that I updated the MD file, added a new line 3 on line number 29 or 28, sorry, 28, and I'll say commit. And now I'm a developer. I want to make sure that these changes are getting reflected on the develop branch. So I'll say create a pull request. I'll say this is feature 200 into develop, and I'll say create. Now, as and when I do that, automatically there's a failure out here telling that one required check has been failed. A work item is missing. The developer did change this branch, which is feature 200, but when he raised the pull request, or when he is like asking or requesting for a merge into the developer branch, the pull request is not able to find an associated work item. It's not able to find that. Though the developer has the work item here on his Azure boards, he has to link this particular work item with his pull request that he has. Now this is me as a developer. How do I link it? In the PR, you have something called work items. I'll say link the work item, and this is the work item that I'm working on, which is called change the readme file. I'll say add this out. That's when this check is done. You have another check, or this check is now gone green right now, telling that the work item is linked. Meaning, what will this really do out here? So if the work item is linked out here, let me go into the board, and I as a scrum master is now looking what the developer is actually doing out here. And this was the work item. This is where I added the description, etc. And to the right hand corner, this is something known as related work, and there is something called as a development, meaning what has app happened on this particular work item till now. And on this particular work item, there is a PR request that came in, meaning the developer is working on this, meaning there is some kind of a development. So I as a scrum master, I do not now have to go to the developer and ask him, or do not have to go to individual developers and ask them, what are you really working on? Rather, I can come into the work item, I can come into the boards, I can come into the work item, and I can track the progress from right here, telling that, okay, fine, this is what is, let's say, the progress that was happening. This is the, let's say, the growth upon, let's say, or this is, let's say, the progress on that particular work item is something that or that I will be able to track as a scrum master. This is me, this is good as a scrum master. For me, this is like great. This branch policy that I enforced right now, which mandates that a developer links the work item, is helping me in order to track the work progress and etc. This is great. Now I as an approver, meaning I am now coming as an approver, so I am logged into the project as a contributor. I only have two users in this particular project, so one is myself and the other is like a contributor. So I'm logging as a contributor, and if I just refresh the screen, I do not have access to the project right now. So it's 9 a.m., 8 a.m. in my class repository, but I am actually working on something called as a 7 a.m. project. It's a newly created project. I do not have access, meaning I, as in the contributor, do not have access. Here I am logged in with a different account. This is the administrator account. So what I have to do is like I have to go to the organization settings and go into the users. And this is the user that I'm actually interested in. This is the contributor. I will say manage user, and I will say something like 7 a.m. project and something like administrators. I'm good with this. I'll just say save. I'll just say save. And now if I come in as the contributor, and if I refresh the screen, I should be able to see the 7 a.m. class project as well. So if I go in here, I have a pull request that is ready, that is waiting. And it says the source branch is deleted and etc. Let's go back. Let's see. Yes, this was the pull request which says created 4 minutes ago, which is added a new line called line 3 on line number 28. So I'll go here, and firstly, I am now an approver, so I want to look at what are the changes that are coming here. So in my case, there are a couple of changes. So I went into the pull request. This is what I did right now. I am into the pull request and I'm looking at the files. There's a section called files here, and I'm seeing what are the changes that are actually coming in. And in here, there is a good comparison between what was there and what will be there after the change. This is one thing that I'll be looking at for sure. Secondly, I'll be looking at why the developer is making the change. Does he have a work item? So yes, he has a work item, and I'll go into the work item and I'll see what is the work item really asking him to do. And the work item was asking him to add a line number 3, add a line 3 at line number 29 on the file. But what did the developer do? He added this at, let's say, line number 28, which is not right, because the work item is asking him to do one thing and the developer did one thing. So what I'll do here is I'll go as a reviewer into the file and I'll say add a comment here telling that the line that needs to be updated is line 29 and not 28. Please make this correction. So I, as an approver, I am adding a comment here telling that, you know what, the change is not right. You had to basically go ahead and add some new line at about line 29 in the file. But what you did was, let's say, wrong, because you went ahead and added a new line at line number 28, and I'll say comment. So I added a comment on the pull request. I, as in me as a contributor, or me as, let's say, an approver, has added a comment on line number 20, or let's say on this particular PR, on this particular pull request. And if I go back into the repository like a developer, now I'm a developer, I'm going into the repository and into, let's say, the pull request, and I'm looking at my pull request out here. I see a comment, but I can happily go ahead, ignore this, and I can just go ahead and, let's say, delete my branch. Now, there is one requirement that someone has to approve, but that someone who had to approve had put in a comment here, but here it's not really effectively telling me that, you know what, there's a comment and all that stuff. It's not effectively telling me. I have to scroll down and have to see that yes, there is some comment, and I can ignore it. I as a developer can ignore it. So what we do as DevOps engineers is we enforce another branch policy which mandates that all the comments must be resolved. What does this really mean out here? So let's refresh the screen. Let's go into our branch. Let's go into our pull request again. Let's go here. There is a comment. Now, this will not come into implementation for a pull request that is already raised. So what I'll do here is I, as a reviewer, will just go ahead and approve this out. And as and when I approve this out, right, now there is another policy that came into picture telling that comments must be resolved. What does this really mean out here is that I, as a developer, I am seeing that the reviewer has approved my PR. I'm good with this. So one reviewer has approved a PR. I linked the work item. Work item is also there, but I haven't really looked at the comment at all. The reviewer is telling me that, you know what, there is a comment here which mandates us not to add this line here, but at line number 29 is what the reviewer is what the reviewer is right now telling me. So I, as a developer, I have to make sure that I work on this comment and I resolve this comment. These are called as comment resolutions, meaning I, as a developer, has to make sure that all these checks are done. Work items are linked, comments must be resolved. This is a branching policy right now. It's required by the policy. So I have to make sure that I change this and say that, okay, fine, this is not line number 28, but this is 29. and I'm committing again. I'm committing this out, and I am adding my work item here because I'd like to make sure that all my work is tracked, and I'm saying line 29 is updated. So I have added a comment out here, and if I go into my pull request right now, it says it's just updated. And if I look at the files right now, if you see 28 is done. Like 28, I have not added anything. I've changed the line to 29 out here. And now as I as a developer will go here and I'll say that, you know what, the line 29 has been updated now. And I will say reply and resolve. Once I do it, my pull request will get merged. This is what happened right now. So what I am doing is that I am now protecting my branches with a set of policies that will make sure that a developer follows the norms of my organization. And the policies that I've implemented right now are that I at least need one reviewer to approve my change. And I can, as I said yesterday, I can automatically add reviewers here. In my case, let's say I'll add this guy, this person, which is a contributor, and I'll say save. Now, this person will be a required reviewer. Whenever you raise a pull request, there will be an email that is getting triggered to this particular email ID asking or requesting him rather to go ahead and approve the change. This is the first thing. Secondly, the developer, whenever he is going for a pull request, he needs to come with an associated work item. Without a work item, you cannot go ahead and merge the pull request. This is a required policy. Secondly, if I just scroll down, there is something called as comment resolutions, meaning I need to make sure that all the comments are resolved before I go ahead and merge the pull request. If the comments are not resolved, as you have seen, even though if I have the approval, I cannot go ahead and merge my PR into the develop branch. So I am now protecting my branch with all these policies so that I can maintain a good quality of the code that is coming into the branch. And all the policy establishment is a role of a DevOps engineer. We have to make sure to establish all these policies so that the repository is always good. It has always a good quality of code out here. Any questions still here, guys? Is everyone able to follow what I'm trying to tell? Is this okay? Anyone, any questions still here, guys? Are you able to
Uh,
follow this?
Sir, all the policies we need to be applied in main branch only, right?
It depends. So in my case, I have a developer, I have a master, I have a release that is coming in later. All the three branches will and should have all these policies. But for feature branches, we won't apply any policies because developers need to make sure to change the code. Developers need to make sure to update the code in the feature branch and etc. So we do not change the code or we do not apply policies on the feature branch.
Good.
Any more questions that I can take, guys? Anyone, anything else that I can take till here? Okay, so moving forward, now this is good enough. I still now, I as a developer is only working on something called as a readme.md file, but in reality, this is not the file that we actually work on. or this is not the file that developers actually work on. Developers work on something like a code. You will have the actual code in the repository. So how are the developers going to work on this code and etc.? Let's get a glimpse of it. So I am using a tool called Visual Studio 2019 server. I, as a developer, is using this tool right now. I will now go ahead and write some sample code. Now, how am I going to do that? Let's look at that also. So once this tool loads, just give it like about a minute or so. And once this tool loads, I will now, as a developer, go ahead and create a new project. And I'll now just call this project as, let's say, my first project or something like that. And I want to write a code in a language called ASP.NET. Now you can have multiple languages in which the code can be written, like for example Python, Java. You have a lot of things. But in my case, since I'm dealing a lot with Azure, like a Windows-based platform, I'm writing my code, or I intend to write my code in a language called ASP.NET. So I come here as a developer, and once this loads in, I'll go ahead and start writing my code out here. And one thing that I want you all to just realize, or one thing that I want you all to focus upon right now, is that I am writing my code in a language called ASP.NET Full Framework. There is another thing also, there's another flavor also out here, which is called .NET Core. Now, do you, as a DevOps engineer, need to understand what is, let's say, the very fine difference between, or what is, let's say, a lot of differences between these two? Not really. But you, as a DevOps engineer, when you are building pipelines, when you're creating pipelines, you need to understand what is really the difference between these two things, which we will look at. But right now, as a developer, I am just focused upon writing a code called full framework. So what I'll do is that I'll come here, and there's a template called ASP.NET. So this is what I'm looking at. You can just type it in. In my case, since I used it like very recently, I'm able to get this. You can just type it in called ASP.NET. So if you want to create this out, you can just say ASP.NET out here. We have all these things out here. And I am just looking at this particular template called ASP.NET Web Application .NET Framework. This is what I'm actually looking at. I'm looking at a .NET Framework template, and I'll say next. And I'll just write something like .NET Framework Application, something like this. I'll say create. And you'll get this page which will ask you what kind of a project that you want. Just select MVC out here and say create. So me as a developer is now going ahead and creating a project called ASP.NET Full Framework, and I'm just creating this project, and all I want to do is make sure that this project or all this code is getting reflected in the develop branch. All this code, whatever I'm writing in my local machine, it's getting reflected in the developer branch. This is what I want to do right now. Now, why do I want to do this? Is because I have a work item which is mandating me to do that. So let me go ahead and assign a work item, and I'll say write a .NET full framework project, and commit it to the develop branch. And this is a work item which is assigned to again myself, because I'm the only user here. I'll just add a description out here, and I'll just go ahead and assign this to my own self, and I'll say save and close. So I now have a work item. I know how to write a code, and I did write a code. So I have just written a very simple code out here, and I'm able to see all these things getting reflected, or all the code getting reflected on the right hand side of my screen. So all this is my code. I'm not making any change. I'm just using the sample template out here. I'm rather not doing any change out here, just using the sample template. And what I'm going to do now is I'll go into the project as a developer, go into the branch, and I will make a local copy of this branch. I will say clone, and I will say clone VS Code. I'll say open VS Code, great. I'll say open, and VS Code is open right now. And I'll just make a local copy of this particular project. I'll just say new folder. I'll say Azure DevOps. I'll select this folder, and I'll just clone all the code, or I'll just clone whatever is there in the develop branch of the repository. This is what I'm doing, and I'll say open in a new window. So I have the repository in place. I have a readme.md file wherein it's just telling me that okay, fine, this is the readme.md file and this is the second line and etc. That's because I'm on the main branch, but I actually want to work on the develop branch. So what I'll do is that I'm just clicking on this branch here in the bottom left hand side of my screen. It's just telling me that I'm on the main branch. I want to change my branch, and I'm just saying okay, fine, this is not the main branch, but this is, let's say, the develop branch on which I'm working on. And as and when I do that, I also now have something called this the third line and etc. So this is the branch that I want to work on, and this is called as a checkout branch. This is now called as a checkout. I now change my checkout branch to something called develop. Earlier it was main. I changed it to something known as develop right now, and I have cloned all my code right now. So I have the code that I have written. I have the repository. I have cloned it onto my local. What I'll be doing right now is that I'll just go into my code, and on this something known as .NET Framework application, I'll just do a right click, and I'll just say open folder in File Explorer. So I'm just opening wherever the folder is, and I want to copy this entire folder that I've just written, which is called .NET Framework application. I'm just copying this entire folder, and I am going into the H drive where I've cloned all my repository into Azure DevOps into first repository, and I'll just paste it here. So all I'm doing is that I am making sure that all my code that I have written is pasted in the folder that basically that I've just cloned into. So I've just cloned everything. I'm just pasting it right now. And once this is done, let's see what happens in our in our VS Code. So this is cloned. This is all pasted here. I'll go into my VS Code right now, and I'm able to see all this folder coming in. And this is now telling me that I have somewhere around 288 changes that I've just pushed or that I've just committed. But again, guys, I am working on the develop branch. Now the question for you all is that can I do a direct commit onto the develop branch right now? Can I be doing that? Can I be doing it from my local machine? Yes, no, maybe.
Yes, we can.
Can we? Guys, any answers here? Yes, no, maybe.
Yes, local
We
you can.
future branch here.
Future branch here. I mean, the thing here I want to really achieve out is that I really cannot do a direct commit onto the develop branch. The reason being my develop branch has a lot of policies which doesn't allow me to do a direct commit onto the develop branch. Which this is not allowed. I cannot do a direct commit. So if I basically go here and I'll say, okay, fine, you know what, this is the develop branch, and if I try to commit it out, it will directly throw me an error telling me that, you know what, The develop branch has policies. I cannot do a direct commit. So I, as a developer, I know this. So what I'll do is that I'll just click here on the branch and I'll say create a new branch from. I can also create a branch from this, or I can also create a branch from my VS Code also. So I'm just saying create a new branch and I'll say this is feature hyphen code hyphen 300. I'm pushing the code and etc. And I'll say enter. And it's now telling me which branch is your source branch or which branch is a parent branch. I am taking my develop branch as my parent branch and I'll just click on develop. And now I have a feature branch right now. This is the branch, or this is the checkout branch that I have right now, which is feature code 300, which is the branch that I just created, which is not there in my repository. If you look at the repository, this branch is not there yet. This is a local branch. I have created it in my local. This branch is not yet published. So what I'm going to do as a developer is that I'll now go ahead stage all my changes. So all these are the code changes basically that I'm now pushing in. So I'll stage all my changes and I'll just give a commit message, commit it out and push all my changes. This is what I'm going to do right now. So I'm pushing all my changes using this particular branch called feature code, something like this. So I'll say this is a code push for .NET full framework and I'll say commit and I'll now say publish the branch. As and when I do that, it's now understanding that okay fine, this is the branch that we need to publish, these are the changes that we need to publish, and this is just going ahead and creating a new branch out here. So if you give a couple of refreshes out here, after this is done, it will take like about a minute or so. So this wheel is still spinning, it's telling synchronizing changes. So once this is done, let's look at the state of our repository. Let's look at and let's understand what is the repository like. So the wheels is this is done. And if I now go here, if I just refresh this page, I now have a new branch called feature 300. And this is the branch that I have used in order to publish all my changes. Now, if you look at this, I have the .NET Framework application. But if you look at the develop branch, I don't have this. It's just a README file. So what I'll do as a developer is I'll just go ahead, create a pull request, and I'll say into the develop branch, this is the commit that I did. This is the code push for .NET Full Framework. These are all the files that are coming in using this particular commit. And I will just go ahead and link a work item here, which is called write.NET Full Framework and commit into the develop. And I'll say create. As in when I do this, there are two checks that got successful, which is like work item is linked and comments are resolved. So there are no commits, there are no comments. And now the contributor must come in and review this code and approve it out. So what I will do as a developer is I'll say okay fine, set it to autocomplete and I'll delete my feature branch as and when the merge is done. And now a contributor, meaning now an approver, if he goes into the pull requests, he'll be able to see that okay fine, there is a pull request which just got updated and I am a required approver here. I'll go ahead and approve this out. Once this is done, the branch will get merged. The feature branch is also deleted. And if I now look at the develop branch right now, I have my .NET application which just came in using a pull request. And if I look at the history, this is a pull request that updated my change. This is the PR that updated my change. And once this is done, I as a developer will move my work item. I'm done with this. It's not to do. It's not also doing. So I'm just dragging and dropping it. This is done. And let's say a scrum master will be able to look at all the changes that we're doing that were basically happening here. So right now there are two changes out here. One is a PR, which is a pull request. The other is a commit that happened on top of this particular work item out here. This is how we normally go ahead, track all our changes. This is how normally we go ahead and merge our code and etc. Now the assignment for you all today is I did a .NET full framework. I want you all to write a very simple .NET core application and push it into the repository. This is into the develop branch, and the develop branch should have all the required policies. So how do you write it? Very simple. Again, you just open the VS Code and you have something called as new project. Use this particular template called ASP.NET Core Web Application. So this is what I do. It's ASP.NET Core Web Application, and give a name to this particular web application. Just go ahead and create this out. That's it. Once you create it, just do the same thing what I did right now. That clone your repository, paste your code there. Make sure that you are updating this with a pull request. Guys, is this assignment okay? Are you all clear with this?
Yes.
Any questions for today, guys?
Hi, Kiran.
Mhm.
I understand that as a Azure DevOps engineer, we have to allocate the work to developers, but where do we get these instructions from Scrum Master?
No, we are not allocating the work to the developers. The work allocation is done by the Scrum Master. In our case, since we do not have a Scrum Master, I am going ahead and allocating the work. As a DevOps
Okay,
engineer, you make sure that the branches are there, the branch policies are there,
okay,
and also after that, after let's say the developer pushes the code into the repository, that's where our actual work begins to create the CI/CD pipelines and etc. But
okay,
as a DevOps engineer, we do not assign the work to let's say the developers.
okay. Thank you.
Kiran, I have one question.
Yeah, please go.
In the real time, so developers will be many members will be there, right, in one project.
Hmm.
So every developer will work on their future brands and mean separate one. I mean, every person will be have a separate future brands, or else all persons will be work only one branch only, one feature branch.
No, each and every person will have their own feature branches.
Okay.
So that is the reason whenever I am done with a feature branch, right, I'm deleting it out so that it will avoid confusion for someone else working on any other feature branch.
So when they are committing commit to the main branch or master, so
Hmm.
there is a problem, right? Because code issue should be there because every
Hmm.
person will be committing daily
Correct,
basis.
correct.
So how we can solve that?
Like code issues, like for example, when you say code issues, what exactly are you, kind of pointing out to?
Suppose I'm a developer, so I'm committing to the my code into the develop branch.
Okay.
So my code will be there in the brand. I mean brands. Suppose you are also developer, you are also committing, right?
Mhm.
So that code will be continue, right? In I mean in the brand. I mean develop brands.
That's right.
Yeah.
So let's say I am a developer, I am working on a code. You are a developer, you are also working on the same code. You are working on the same file like I am working on. Okay. If both
Okay.
of us are committing to the same branch, okay, both of us we are committing to the same branch, that's when something called as a merge conflict will come into place. So I am basically merging the same code what you are merging it. So there is a conflict here. So you and me have to resolve that merge conflict and then go ahead and then basically give a pull request out there. So now this is up to a developer. How do they, kind of resolve the merge conflicts out here?
Okay.
they run into something known as merge conflict. So to avoid merge conflict, what do we do is that we first do a sync. There is something called pull, push, and etc. So first we do a sync out here. If we do a sync, it will make sure that it pulls all the latest code from, let's say, your, it says it couldn't find the feature branch and etc. So yes, so we first do a sync on, let's say, on a particular branch. I, as a
Okay.
developer, before I push my code, I go here and I do a sync out here. So I make sure to be in sync with the repository, then make my changes and then push my changes. This is what I'll do. In this
Yeah. Okay.
way, I will be able to avoid a lot of, let's say, merge conflicts and etc.
Okay. Yeah.
Any more questions here, guys? So the assignment for today is that please make sure that you have a repository, have main branch and a develop branch in the repository, and make sure that there are policies on the develop branch. And what are the policies? So I need comment resolutions. I need at least one reviewer. I need linked work items.
Kiran, one more doubt here.
Mhm,
So, uh, I mean, like a daily basis, we will be run the CI, right? When they are committing to the
mhm,
code.
mhm.
So, artifacts we don't use, right, in the real, I mean, like release pipelines every time. So, we will go with final artifacts only. We will run the release pipelines. Is it correct?
So that is yes. I mean, partially correct. Yes, it depends upon again the software development life cycle that we are actually following, whether it's a continuous delivery or whether it's a continuous deployment. So I will take that. Let's say once we start with the build and release pipelines, which we are going to do from tomorrow. So once we look
Okay.
into build and release pipelines, we'll look into the different strategies and the different ways in which we can run our pipelines and etc.
Okay, Kiran.
Anything else, guys? Okay, I'm going to close the session, guys. Then we'll meet tomorrow at the same time and we'll discuss more on this. We will start with the build and release pipelines tomorrow, so which is going to be the core activity as a DevOps engineer. So what we do. So we'll start with the introduction of build and release pipelines, and we'll start to and we'll try to create one of the, or we'll try to create one of, let's say, the build pipelines and see how it works and etc. Until then, thank you guys and have a great day ahead.